stop everything. 70% of change initiatives are failing, wasting thousands and crushing morale. Is yours next? Today, we're going to discuss the five signs: high resistance, poor communication, lack of leadership buy-in, misalignment of goals, and the declining of employee engagement when it comes to change initiatives. Hello, welcome everyone. Dr. Horacio Maldonado. Welcome to our All Things Leadership YouTube channel. We're excited to have you here. So let's just jump in straight into it. Change management, right? With change initiatives, in dealing with change, there's always some sort of pain associated with it. And today we're going to talk about those five things, some of the causes, and some of the recommendations you can use today for those fixes. Okay, the first is going to be high resistance. What does that mean? How can I attach high resistance to any change initiatives that we have? We've got pushback, lack of cooperation, passive or active dissident. There's going to always be pushback when it comes down to any kind of change initiatives within the organization or even your team. Okay, I wrote a bunch of notes down here because I wanted to share with you, everyone, especially when it comes out to change. Change is one of the things that we discuss a lot within my organization and within my business. The big ones can be the pushback and the lack of cooperation. Why does that happen? What causes those pushback? What causes that lack of cooperation? Some of the causes we have is a fear of loss, the uncertainty, and the most important one is a lack of trust. They don't trust that this change is going to be effective moving forward. So it's going to be that pushback, that lack of cooperation. So what can we do to fix all of those things or some of them, or just initiate that conversation or discussion with your team? Engage employees early and listen to the concerns. Listen to the concerns, very important. Sometimes they are not going to be that vocal when it comes down to expressing how they really feel about this change. Maybe this change is going to affect them, maybe personally or professionally. And we have to be able to understand that. So listening to their concerns is going to be very important. Provide clear reasons and why the change is necessary. Transparency, transparency. This thing screams transparency when it comes down to being very clear, the purpose and the reason for it. They don't all have to agree with you. And we'll talk a little bit about that buy-in later on within this on the show. Involve employees in the change process to build ownership. Keyword there is going to be involve the employees in the whole change process. The more they're involved, the better they will understand. There's going to be, well, you know what, I trust leadership. I trust the team leader about this new change, so I feel much better about it. Also, we're going to emphasize the learning from resistance rather than ignoring it. So you're going to have some pushback. You're going to have some people that are not going to be fully, invested in this change, and that's okay. You need to have those to ensure there's an equal balance. But if you follow the listening to the concerns, if you just provide the clear reasoning or transparency to their team, you're not going to have a lot of pushback. You have some because there's always people see change differently, and there's always associated some sort of a behavior attached to it. So that's going to be the first one that we discuss. Going to be the high resistance, the pushback, like cooperation. Okay. The second one that we're going to talk about is going to be poor communications. We talk about communications all the time. Okay. And how does, you know, poor communication come into effect when it comes to change? It's very simple: confusion, rumors, misinformation, and all those things like, well, I'm not sure about this. I heard that this new change is going to affect our hours of operation. It's going to affect my benefits. Something that if the communication is not completely clear, there's going to be some problems, especially with change. I learned this very important about pre-communication when I was in the military. Out of my 24 years of military service, communication was key on every single thing. Okay, so what are some of the causes that poor communications when it comes to change management do? You know, it gives a mixed signal, right? It gives a missed message, inconsistent updates. There's really no clear channel in what we're going to do. So we can even go back to the first one, the high resistance, talk about transparency, listen to their concerns, All those things are going to be very important. So, some of the fixes that we can use or implement for the peer communication is create a detailed communication plan in detail how, what, how, and how is all going to get done. Communicate that with everyone for a very clear, precise, transparent moving forward. Okay, use multiple channels, emails, meetings, Q&As, have meetings, have brainstorms, have group chats, have, personal, virtual or in-person meetings, and just talk about that. Talk about some of the things that what is concerning them about the change initiative. Ensure the messages are clear, transparent, and frequently. We already been talking about that, right? Clear, transparent, and frequently. Encourage a two-way communication to address all questions. We have to address every single question that we have. Okay, that was for poor communications. And the third one is one of the most we discuss more in this channel is the lack of leadership buy-in. All right, we have to be honest about we have to be have everybody on board, or nobody's going to come on board. So how does the lack of leadership buy-in come into the change initiative? Well, absent conflicting messages and no priority of change. I mean, for change, and that's where the whole buy-in comes into play. Leaders are not convinced or engaged. If they're not engaged or they're not really convinced that this is gonna happen or how it's gonna impact everybody, the buy-in is going to be very difficult. Okay, you have to be very convincing and you have to be very engaging in what the change initiative is going to be, regardless of what project you have, regardless of what team do you have. If they feel that they cannot trust you or you're sending a mixed message, or even that the one is initiating that change management is not comfortable, we're going to have some problems. I mean, that's just being honest. Okay, so you have to be convincing. If you're not being convincing to them, you're gonna lose them. So you can be engaged. And what can we do? What are some of the fixes that you start using? Secure commitment from top executives early, which means be very transparent from the top to the bottom. I use the analogy that was in the military. Whenever I got the order from the captain, went all the way down to the most junior personnel. And it was my responsibility to ensure that all the way up and down the chain of command, the message was very clear. Same thing here. Making sure that there's a commitment, secure the commitment that from the top executives from your team, your higher leadership to understand that. Leaders must visibly and consistently support the change. You have to be able to support that change because you're going to have an unbalanced direction, I would say, if not everybody's on board. Train leaders on how to be effective during change and assign them as change champions or change coordinators. Do something that's going to be convincing, once again, convincing and engaging to the team about this buy-in, okay, especially from leadership and management. Align leader behaviors with change goals. We're going to talk a little bit about goals as the next one. So, aligning your leadership behaviors to understand, hey, you know what? I don't want you to start freaking out. I don't want you to start acting with a face, your behavior, your body language, every single thing, especially dealing with change, because they could be looking for you as leadership as you're trying to do the buy-in in what you're going to do. It's be very important. Okay. Then the fourth sign we're going to talk about is going to be the misalignment of goals. The misalignment of goals. And what does that mean? Change initiatives that don't clearly connect with organizational priorities. All right, what are we changing? Why are we changing? Do these changes align with pretty much in what we're doing within the organization or within the team? And what does it affect? Well, that affects a lot of stuff, especially for the misalignment of goals. A lot of the change initiatives that do not clearly connect with the organization. Now we have resources that are wasted, loss of focus, and then, conflicting priorities. What is important? Is new change more important? Is our active change that we're doing is more important? What is important? So that's where we can use the high resistance, the peer communication, the buying, all of that transparency. Okay, so especially the resources that are wasted, it could be financially, it could be time. So we got to be very mindful of that when we're doing any kind of change initiatives within the organization. And some of the fixes you can use right now, you can clarify and communicate the change purpose and expected outcomes. Give This is what we're doing, how we're going to do it, and this is going to be the outcome. Okay, be very clear on that. That way they'll understand the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay, we're working towards this goal. We're working towards this mission and how we're going to accomplish this. Align initiatives with broader organizational strategies. Brainstorm strategy, 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 and more strategy. How are we going to get from point A to point B? Okay, or how we're going to get from point A to point Z and all in between. So that's teamwork, strategies, brainstorm sessions, email, teams, virtual, any which way, but always communicate for that strategy that you have within your team. Regularly review progress towards goals and adjust as needed. You know, there's different strategies you can use to track your progress. There's different strategies you can use to check your goals within the organization. There's many you can use. There's many resources available for that. So always keep everybody informed. I think it's going to go back to the communication piece. Just keep them informed of what's going to happen. If we need to make any adjustments to the change, just let them know. Let everyone know. So there's going to be no miscommunication, as we talked previously. Use data and feedback to course correct. Hey, when we're strategizing your change, we got to find some data, right? Just we have to build the data, analyze it, and then move it forward. So be very cautious in how you provide that data. But in a real world, the more transparent you are with data, the better it will be. Okay. And the fifth sign is going to be declining employee engagement. That's going to be big. That's pretty much a similar up to the lack of leadership and buy-in and all of the we're trying to do and the communication. So the declining employee engagement, what does that really mean, right? So very simple. Absent. I'm not really here. I'm here but not here. Maybe some lower morale, a decrease in productivity. That all happens when the employee is not engaged. And why is that person not fully engaged? And why is this person, or why is the team member not engaged in the fact that we're trying to make this change? What causes that? Well, cause fatigue, unclear benefits, lack of support, pretty much everything, right? Especially because now we're including our personal behaviors and our personal feelings while we're in the professional setting. And we have to be cognizant of that when we're going to make those decisions. That declining employee engagement is very important because they have to believe in what you're doing and what this change is going to do. And some of the fixes that we can do is we can recognize and reward quick wins. If the first thing that we did was go over certain things, let's do it. Hey, let's praise them. Every step of the way, short wins are really going to go a long way. Provide training and resources to ease a transition. Change is a transition. Change is a team transition for the whole organization, whether they're implementing a new policy or they're implementing a new program, a new rule, depending on your industry. Everything's a transition. Okay, so fostering the culture of support and encouragement, always important that the culture of the organization is very well aware and they can foster that and encourage that this change is going to be beneficial to everyone involved. We're going to monitor engagement, address issues quickly. Anything that we have, any short fires we have, let's put them out, let's address them and move forward. We can do all of that, you know. So, we talked about the five signs for changing neighbors, high resistance, the pushback and everything, the poor communication, the lack of leadership buy-in, the misalignment of the goals, and the declining of the employee engagement when they're not involved with this program. Okay. I definitely encourage you to assess this change effort and these signs within your organizations. I invite any experiences or any questions you may have. And you can always save this video and reinforce these signs and any fixes if you want to implement them, if you want to just change them, if you just need that as the baseline. Definitely, I would definitely encourage with it. I would suggest subscribing for more leadership and change management insights to our channel. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more of it, consider subscribing. I really, really appreciate it. Remember, empower, lead, and transform boldly. Thank you. Have a good one.